Howdy y'all, I am Ice Gold, and today I've got yet another long video where I play 25 games of PvP on a bad school. I don't know what it is with me and only ending up doing these on bad schools because I always end up getting buffed after I make the videos. Like, think about Ice for example, you know? I did 50 games of that, and it's actually doing quite nicely in the meta right now with, you know, Shu and all that to counter negative auras, that type of thing. And with Fire, you know, that's also doing a lot better too, since they have 7-pip triple OT now with Emmett's bottom path, I want to say it is. And I'm excited to get to trying that, but with Death, I don't know. Even after the Pyre Dragon fusion spell came out, it's still struggling here and there, and it is fully possible for it to lose to its main counters on a consistent basis, as y'all saw in Monday's video. This is the deck that I ended off on. You can definitely see that I absolutely had a different one in the beginning of these games and switched it up as time went on, but this is the one that I ended with, and this is the one that I think is the best, or at least the one that worked for me in a lot of these matchups. But of course, you know, it's not always going to work. Definitely not, and I still have not gotten Anubis. That is what I would definitely replace all 3 of these skeletal pirates with, but you get the picture. So, let me also show y'all the gear for the hat. I am rocking the Wastelander hat. There is, I've thought about using the Xibalba hat, which I really should make it to a 170 version. I have heard of a setup that uses this that gets me a little bit more resist. And then I've got the Hunhao robe, and yeah, this is just what I used all throughout. Wastelander hat still very, very good. Gives that extra power pin for that extra fire accuracy, so you don't lose stats. Pretty nice. For the robe, of course, we've got the Hunhao robe. That's what I used. And then I pulled this from one of the loyalty store packs, like before game 22 or 23, something like that. And yeah, I mean, I would use it if I had the amulet, and I mean, that's a setup that I want to get around to trying, but for the time being, I just decided to go with the Hunhao robe for the duration of this video. For the boots, I'm running the Xibalba boots. This is really the only, like, good pair of boots for this overall school, and this is really just how it is on every school right now. The Xibalba boots is kind of just all that you got, because it is the Dream Reaver boots, but instead of pip chance, it gives you shad rating, so that's pretty cool, and you also gain some resistance, which is pretty cool. I said that twice, but yeah, I mean, your Xibalba boots, definitely on top. Definitely the pair that you want. For the wand, I am using the level 160 Xibalba wand. This I am doing for that extra square socket, so I can get 650 more HP. That has really come in handy here and there. I've got 12,256, as you can see, and this is just like a real good source of extra health. I had used this one before this video, and you know, it's very good as well, but one thing that I found out was that you actually don't go below your stat caps with this. I think I was hitting maybe, okay, so it gives the same amount of pierce, but I am 2 damage over the cap if I use this, whereas with this I am hitting 202 damage perfectly. So this one is kind of a no-brainer, you know, just get that extra HP going on, and that's how it is. So that's pretty cool. You're not going to use any of these cards except for the wand hits. I have them crossed out, so there is that. The new setup that I want to try does involve this wand, but I gain health elsewhere, so that's pretty cool as well. For the Fame, I am running the Fell Dream Reaver knife. This is also kind of a no-brainer. It's like, this is, I want to say it's the only one that gives all of this damage and a square socket, so definitely something that you want. And you know, I've got all the jewels maxed out on it. I've got the ash weaving jewels, which come with me weaving into fire. That is definitely something that I would recommend Death Wizards do at the moment, although you can weave into storm and do some crazy stuff with that too, so that's pretty cool. And then for the amulet, you know, Hunhao's Singularity amulet. I am trying to get the death version of this, so, but for the time being, I'm rocking Hunhao. That's what's up. Another Death and Fire Pierce Jewel, as well as that 16 accuracy for Death. It does give a Moonblade, but my strat does not really revolve around using Wraith or Blades really in any way, outside of like Ghoul. But I would recommend this for Death Wizards trying to get into PvP. The Faeriequeens Amulet, as well as the boots, are equivalent to these, I think. Or well, you'll probably get like slightly lower pip conversion with the Faeriequeens Amulet, but it's the same thing, pretty much. This is the only piece that you kind of can't get in a pack. That's kind of all that there is to it. But yeah, for the ring, I've got the Ominous Skyfarer's Band. This is probably going to see use for like a long time into the future, just because of the 4% extra pip chance that it gives onto the Reaver ring, and you really need that extra pip chance to make up for it. So that's what's up. You still hit your damage cap with the Skyfarer ring, so that's what I use. That's what I recommend. For the pet, I am using a Goatling for the 2 extra 3-fold cards, and those really matter a lot because I can run 8 with this pet. And I'm running a triple-double Mighty, and that gets me to all the stat caps without, you know, dipping below in Pierce. And then for the mount, I'm rocking the Crystal Unicorn for 2 extra accuracy, and for the deck, I'm running the Hunhao deck for this absolute Thanos snap of a card. And you'll see exactly what's going on with that in this video. So you could always use the August Sage deck for an extra Dark Surge. As a death, you do use Dark Surge quite a bit, but I decided to stick with the Hunhao deck. I get a little bit of extra HP, and yeah, I mean, you're not really running P-Serve on a death anyway, like, let's be real. So it's like 4 Surges versus 5, but then you also get, you know, Thanos Snap Monster Mash, so that's pretty cool. So that is the gear. I imagine I spent a long time talking about that. I'm probably going to have to put timestamps in the description, but these are all the stats. You do need the Unicorn to get to 26% accuracy, and then obviously with your deck accuracy you're fine. You are 5% resist short here. That is kind of the one trade-off. You do hit all of your offensive stat caps, but the resist is going to be marginally lower. It doesn't really come into play too much. You do still have 12.2k health. That's what matters the most. And then, you know, pretty good crit, pretty good block, even with the Wastelander hat. And then perfect Pierce, and then I also have 50 Fire Pierce because I'm running 5 circle slots. And yeah, I mean, 50 Fire Pierce is pretty damn good, so what can I say? But then, you know, 101% pip chance, pretty good. And then you're not going to be P-serving too much. I would not really recommend relying on this. The only thing that you might be like P-serving is things like Headless Horseman, but as you can see, I only pack 2 of those. Like, it's not really going to matter all that much. A lot of what you're using are like even pip spells like Skeletal Dragon. Elephant is also in there, although that doesn't really matter for P-serve, but you can combine this with Skeletal Dragon for Pyre Dragon, which is 4 pips, and then obviously 3 pulls are 2. These are kind of nice to P-serve, but I mean, you don't really count on that too much. Vampire is also 4. Poison is 4, Grim is 6, Mash is 6, right? Ghoul is 2, and then Red Ghost is 4, Fossil is 10. So overall, very, very good. This is actually kind of scuffed. I'm not gonna lie to you. If it were me, I would take out this, and then add in 2 more monster mashes. But apparently, they go for 200 empowers on Gamma's trading post. I don't have that, so yeah, just pretend like I have 2 extra mash TCs. It's like if you don't have mash TCs, or it's like you don't have a plug for them, it's like then it's a little bit sus. But at that point, I would recommend just running like the TC race strat anyway, and using blades. So. Maybe this is just like the rich man strat. Maybe this is just the strat that I could do because I'm a YouTuber. But anyway, that is the gear and the deck. I have talked for way too long. But yeah. Where was I? Let me go back to my Google Doc. Yeah, talked about the Pyre Dragon. I did find a strat that honestly worked pretty well with the whole Monster Mash thing. It was definitely more unorthodox compared to other death strats at the moment. And y'all kind of saw a brief glimpse back on Halloween when I uploaded my last death PvP video. That strat made up the main idea of what I went for in these games, and it understandably worked better against some schools compared to others. There were some highlights, like when I beat the hell out of a few Myth Wizards using that strat, and, you know, definitely a lot of lowlights, like when probably like a good quarter to a third of these games were against the Jade School, with a couple doing PvE strats. That's always fun. And while it seems like Death has gotten better since the update, Like, the devs really need to address the life matchup, and especially Burrowing Bane. But for now, I'd say the death sits at maybe 5th or 6th out of the 7 schools on the PvP school ranking. Something I should have done for the other videos was put all the games into a playlist, so I decided to do that for this one, and it's on my channel if you want to watch any of these matches in full individually. So, with that all in mind, I've been talking for 11 minutes. Let's dive into the games. So for game 1, I went against a myth, and I have to say, we had a damn good highlight to start off this set of games. This is the Blitz strat, as I call it, at its finest. Force the myth to choose between stoning off your infections for less damage, or trading a drop bear with a much stronger mash. Nicole here took the second option, and absolutely felt the power of the Blitz strat as I was able to do 8,000 damage in just a few rounds. Completely blindsiding her when she was up by about 3,000 health beforehand. This, in all honesty, is what I recommend Death Wizards do if they want to beat Myth. It's still a very bad matchup for the Death. There's been some reduction after the shift ban, but it's still something that you've got to take seriously, as Myth really does counter everything you do otherwise. Gotta play smart, but Myth is a mostly brainless school, so you can still win in some scenarios by outsmarting your opponent. Game 2, everyone's favorite, Death Mirrors. I'll go ahead and say this, I do not pack weakness counters on my Death, as y'all saw. You don't usually get mirrors, but it's still a good idea to keep at least one ice pip to make your opponent think twice about sending a vampire, just in case there's a possibility you might snowman and stop them in their tracks. So, that in mind, I was very surprised to have been able to win this matchup. These tend to be drawn-out wars of attrition, but I was able to pull ahead in the end when I got off a good Grim and then a good Mash a little after that. Mirrors mostly come down to RNG, like if you pull what you need and if you're critting more than your opponent, but in this one I had a decisive edge throughout most of the match, and I was able to really capitalize on that towards the end. Yes, for game 3 we got a guy playing on the ballot school. This is a match that I would have absolutely tossed this guy around like a salad in had it happened after the update. He was doing everything the balance wizards do, stalling, playing like he had a gun to his head, and abusing broken cards, some of which are now banned, and I imagine if he tried queuing again he'd do so poorly that the 15 elo he gained from this match would have gotten undone by some 1300 tweaker clicking random cards. Like, oh no, I have to use my brain on this school for the first time in 12 years, oh, woe is me. Anyway, despite the fact that he was a balance before November 13th, 2024, I kinda had him on the ropes for a while. It was just the last, 3 to 4-ish minutes of the fight where he started stalling and doing everything I said before, and that was where it sort of ended. I had a killer combo set up, but then he burned, and then when I got to be able to use the combo again, he shielded and then gearheaded the last tech of my poison to barely kill me by less than 100 damage on the turn where I would have destroyed him where he stood. This was a very frustrating match, but I take solace in knowing that his puny ass can trouble the arena with his stalling nonsense no longer. In game 4, I went against a fire, and this fella honestly kinda had it. I was just using all the things that make death insane here. And while the matchup has flipped to favor the fire as of late, poison is still a very strong card, and I honestly did quite a lot of the damage here with just that card. At the end, I got a pretty nasty Grim off, and that was enough to seal the deal after another poison. Not really much else to it, just kinda wailed on the guy, and went real hard in the paint with my offense moves. In game 5, I went against a Life Wizard and dropped 30 elo for it, because guy's a smurf. But anyway, here we have our first instance of the game's worst reverse counter matchup. That pretty much means that the school that is favored should be getting countered per the wheel and how the game's designed, but it just doesn't happen because of Burrowing Bane. And if you watch this match in full, you will be able to see that, yes indeed, this person used quite a few of those against me, and that was what did the bulk of the damage. I'm also pretty sure this is a Smurf account. I know there's multiple people that play on it, but the actual owner must not really be all that great if he was negative as a Life Wizard even, before the update. And whoever I saw on November the 3rd, on the other hand, knew exactly what was up and used the game's poor design against me. Nothing against the dude, the game just actually sucks that much. The school I'm supposed to counter the hardest just, doesn't get countered like that. But I do want to briefly mention, and keep this in mind, I went for a lot of weaknesses and infections in this match. And I ended up seeing a couple different kinds of counters to those, which was a bit curious, but it was whatever since there was no way I was winning against, insane flying rat spam anyway. Especially when he packs 15 bubbles to my 10, that was never going to work out. There was no chance in hell that I was winning the bubble war. And I was definitely not going to keep a bubble for longer than maybe a turn or two at the maximum. For Game 6, this was the closest out of all 25. This was a really close one. Now, the fire matchup has been mad goofy recently, and it's certainly become much harder to win for the death. This guy in particular was playing well. He took a good double buffed elephant for about 4,300, and I was able to trade it with a buffed grim for 4,100. So, all in all, we weren't doing too bad. It was just about who could hit who first for more, and he got off a couple good hits, but I played for that final mash, and it ended up working when I tanked his last hit with 42 HP thanks to a colossal brain ghoul. I was only able to win with 0.3% of my health, which, you know, that's a true swing match that could have gone either way, but I was absolutely, definitely cooked if he started spamming overtimes like a lot of fires do these days, though. Game number 7. I want to set the record straight. I have absolutely no respect at all whatsoever for Jades or Jade adjacents. This includes people who stall all games, sit under brace, or stabilize now, pack 15 bubbles, and just sitting there and playing counter among plenty of other things. Y'all know I like to play a bit more proactively on my death, so when I get a Jade schooler who is dedicated solely to making sure I cannot do anything to advance the match, there is pretty much no shot in hell I'm winning. Eventually, we got to the part of the match where the guy turtling started spamming that flying rat that's 80 value over DPP, and eventually finished me with a Djinn because the devs decided giving these people the power to actually deal damage was a good idea. Y'all know this guy's the type to pack half his deck with auras now that the update's out too. Really just an absolute tumor all around to play against. Even if I had been able to get a good look on him with a Doom Oni, there's a 100% chance he would have Giga Healed out of kill range through an Infect and under a Sanctuary, because those bubbles are still allowed in the game for some reason, and had it heal him for at least 4,000. Even through a threefold, keep that in mind. Boggles my mind how the devs have never even once considered the idea that giving heal spammers the power to kill was a poor choice. Outgoing pins need to go, and I'll stand on that any day. Game 8. This was a frustrating one. So this guy, you know, he uses a snowman, which is kind of whatever. Fires tend to do that against death. But the main thing here is that I was pulling for my bubbles and just never found them. Anytime I did, he had one waiting for me, so the absolute biggest thing I needed as a death was just out of the picture entirely. Then we ended up in a situation where the guy was just spamming overtimes like it was nothing, because for the life of me I could never pull a Grim Reader for the entire game. That was a constant here. Most of the game was me scrambling to find useful cards, and I just never could because Ratbeard removed pre-enchants 4 years ago. By the time I did, I needed a Ghoul Blade, a Bubble, and a Virulence to kill with it. I was able to get the latter two, but in the chaos that was my cycling trying to actually, you know, pull a kill shot, I had to leave my Ghoul Blade on for a little too long, and it got enfeebled for 2 pips. At that point, I needed to just hit anyway and combo it with something, which I did, but then he just sent a snowman, and that was sort of that. With how many of those he used, I am reasonably confident I would have mopped the floor with him with Pyre Dragon, but, you know, death was in 6th place during this, so whatever. The other thing was, I needed to elf off those 2 65 shields in order to have a game-winning mash lined up, but didn't pull it, of course, and had to poison, which severely limited my options with a follow-up hit. Even after everything, he still almost lost. I just needed to pull an elf there and the game was mine, but the game decided I was going to lose that day. That's just how it happened. I had the guy pinned down in a matchup that favors him. He was spamming overtimes, which should make it very easy for him, but he nearly lost, and the only reason why he didn't was because I didn't pull elf one time at the end of the game. He was also very excited to have won off of that for some reason. I don't know. PvPers just get big heads over nothing sometimes. It's just how it is. In Game 9, I went against the Storm, and alright, wow, y'all, seeing the old Krokotopia arena is quite the trip now that the update's out. This match was honestly just kind of run-of-the-mill. Nothing too special happened outside of my absolute Thanos snap of a Grim at the end. I think that's the hardest I hit anybody in this entire video. And I was able to keep an Aura and a Bubble. And, you know, I took a Ghoul and comboed it into this Grim that did 8.1k damage, which was totally nuts. And this matchup is one of those that's seen some reduction just with how good Storm has become lately and with how Death has fallen off. But innately, Death has an easier time beating Storm than Fire, for example, so the counter technically still works. He gets this big owl before the Grim, but, I mean, it's so crazy how much damage Death can do when they can actually, you know, play the game. And moments like that are why I played on this school for this 25 games video. Sometimes you get games that make the suffering all worth it. Game 10 was another Death Mirror, and boy did this one take a turn. In an absolutely mental turn of events halfway through the match, this guy whipped out an Ice King art in a mirror match. Just absolutely astonishing, and from there I was honestly pretty sure I was going to lose, because again, I do not pack weakness counters, and this guy was definitely using his share of those. But I was lucky enough to have pulled a Elephant, and I countered his shields with it, but like, I'm reasonably sure if he'd kept going, he would have won the match. I'd created quite the gap. It was 11k to 4k when he fled, but y'all should never underestimate the power of death chromatic weaknesses when your opponent does not have the counters. He could have pulled it back narrowly despite everything, but I can also see why he'd flee after his main thing got countered so easily. In Game 11, we saw another one of my masterpieces. For this one, I did pretty much the exact same thing I did in Game 1, where I forced the myth to choose between countering my move and doing less damage since I had a shield up, and trading a drop bear with a much stronger monster mash. I took this guy from 10.6k to dead in just a few short rounds, using the blitz strategy to its absolute fullest extent and comboing this mash into a Grim, into another mash, in rapid succession to win the game. Death can really hit fast and hard, even against Myth, and it's those combos that keep it alive in this matchup. Game 12. Well, looky here. It's the guy from Game 5 who had a million counters for my weakness-centered strat. Well, I learned from last time, so I'm going to try a different strat here. Alright, so I pack, 8 Tri-Shields to try and set up a Doom Oni with a Ghoul Blade and an Aura, and maybe try and do some mash action afterward to ensure the kill, and okay, never mind. Turns out, the guy has a million Fire Elves and Elephants too. Sure is nice and cool how this was my 7th game of the day, and he's packing infinite counters to both of my main strats. It's like I was going against a Myth, except I couldn't just spam him down because this school can just, heal through my 3-folds and be totally fine. I'm gonna keep saying this, the devs need to look into this matchup and see why it's completely chalked for the school that they think should be winning here. Even after the infection buff in the update, there's barely been any reduction in this matchup. It's still a safe life matchup, and it's things like that which makes me put, Death near the bottom of the tier list. Its main counter just does not work in its favor, mostly because of Flying Rat spam, but then, if you weave into Storm to combat said Flying Rat spam, you can't get around shields anymore, which is way more common in all the other matchups, because Death has to choose what they want to lose to. So, just a pain all around. Maybe someday, life will be at the bottom again, because any meta where life is the best school, especially in this one that we see today, after the update, is an awful meta that I recommend nobody plays in at all. In Game 13, I went against another Myth, and this was another absolute work of art. The minds of Conjurers are so easy to twist and bend to your will, and that really showed in this match. In my opponent's haste, she gave me an open Grim with a Ghoul Blade and a Bubble Up, which pretty much allowed me to do whatever I wanted, and I was able to send a Grim that did 5.5k, following it up with a mash for the kill shot. This really just went the same way the other games did. This one was more on top of her defense, but it really just prolonged the inevitable. Caught another W against my hard counter. You truly love to see it. Game 14, oh boy. Basically, she just played He Don't Got It and had it work. I could not find a Skeletal Pirate to save my life. There was a round where it would have been the absolute most perfect move of all time, but I just did not have it in my hand, and that cost me. I did what I usually do in that scenario and put a -60 on her, but she did not care at all about that. This match was what single-handedly flipped the matchup in my eyes, because prior to this I was thinking, who in their right mind would send a Rain of Fire through a 60 weakness? It's gonna do like no damage, 1,000 tops. But Allura didn't care though. OTs were OTs, and she just got 5-6 rounders, which she then used as leverage for Ifrit, and you know the rest at this point. She healed against a death, and it worked. Yippee! I love deck RNG. For game 15, wow. The mighty must have truly fallen, because we are in a day and age where Caldera Jin is barely even doing half my health with 2 buffs. Other than that play that this guy made, which I honestly kind of rocked with because it's been a minute since anything other than Shield Gambits had a place in PvP, this match was kind of just what you'd expect from me at this point with the Blitz strat. I had a mash on this guy for 7,800 and Grim for the rest of my damage. I'm pretty sure y'all get the point by now. For game 16, this was my first death game after the update, and not gonna lie, she kind of pressed me a little bit. Of course, this is the Blitz strat. It took me, you know, all of 2 minutes to shred her health down to nothing, even hitting through a 70 set and still doing 1300 with 1 buff on an aura mash because, you know, whiz, I guess, but I mostly just got in a position to overwhelm her as quick as possible, and that was what gave me the win in this match here. For game number 17, this one was particularly satisfying. As of late, and especially now that the update's out, we've been seeing an influx of life wizards going full cosplay mode and using what's been dubbed the Lith strats. This pretty much involves just spamming buffs as you normally do with a regular PvE strat, and then sending a fantastic Djinn to one-shot your opponent. It is literally just regular PvE. I can liken it to what we'd see every Death Wizard do back in January when they were just, you know, spamming storm buffs and then sending a rain of torrents back when those still did double damage, and it was especially effective because the other deaths couldn't just use vampires to weaken them since they were chromatic weaknesses and the hits were not on school. That was a very long run on sentence. I'm kind of disappointed in myself. That was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a lot of words. Anyway, that's the main reason why Lith is so hated. It's very cheesy and the usual counters don't work. You've got to be throwing big time to lose because another main point of the Lith strat is infinite sustainability. These people will pack half their deaths with right? These people will pack half their decks with myth buffs, and the other half is bubbles, braces, and heals. With Twarat's existence, there are now 4 giga heals with a total of 16 copies for Liths to use to their heart's content, allowing them to basically just jade until they can one-shot you. I was fortunate enough to have pulled both my Sun Serpent, which I only packed 1 of, as well as a couple Skeletal Dragons to counter the blade spam, and that was enough to pull me out of what was inevitably going to be a loss if I had not been able to pull the counters. I sent this badass Avenging Fossil at the end here after a particularly nasty Elephant to counter his Gambit, and the best part was, I had a Grim teed up for the round after just in case he survived. Counting the Monster Mash that I sent a bit before the Elephant, we were looking at 3 different hits that I sent that dealt north of 4,000 damage if I had been able to get the Grim off, if he didn't, you know, die before then. Yet again, the Blitz strat reigns supreme against these idiots. So for game 18, this was my only myth game post-update, and it went pretty well if I'm honest. With Shift gone, I didn't have to resort to my usual trickery to win the match, and I was able to use the new spell fusions to my advantage. Pyre Dragon was my friend here, and it really bolstered my blade identity to the point where I was easily able to get 3 buffs on a hit without a bubble. That propelled me forward in the tempo of the match, and it was a pretty easy win from there. I guarantee you, this match would have been much harder to win if we were still before the update. That Pyre Dragon set me up to win 100%, and without it, I would not have been able to pressure effectively. That was the buff Death needed, and it's performing much, much, much better these days. I mean, my Google Doc says not by much, but let's be real, it's performing much better against shields, so, you know. Death has certainly gotten better, and I rock with that a lot. Game 19, alright, I hereby present another deck-failing RNG shitfest. If it weren't for him deck-failing 1 time at the very end, I was cooked 100%. Otherwise, this was another matchup that I was able to win just off of, you know, blitzing him to death. But, I mean, he didn't really give me much to work with. I mean, he sure as hell loved his auras, though. That's... if there's one thing I detest about this new update and its implications on the PvP meta, it's definitely the massive uptake in life wizards with big egos, because their school is far away and the best right now. Far and away the best right now, I can speak English. Jokes aside, the other big thing that a lot of people have talked about is these aura wars that matches tend to devolve into. If you're a more proactive player like me, then this matchup was a direct hit to your playstyle, because some of these types just do not let you do anything and dedicate an alarming amount of their deck to aura wars. I personally only pack Attenuates, because it's truly not worth packing more, especially when I have Ash, but some folks are out here crazy with it. I mean, this guy had every Attenuate. I've seen people using Starfall and Pathogen, and look, stay tuned for a later game, because that's going to be fun to go over. Either way, this one was closer than it needed to be because I was losing the Aura and Bubble Wars, but I was able to eke out a win at the end just on school alone due to him finally getting some bad RNG after 9 minutes of me getting the short end of that stick. A win's a win, I'm down for all that, just wish getting there was less of a headache, but this is Ratbeard's Wiz, that's an issue that'll never get better. With game 20, I brought it within a round, so not the worst showing. Definitely could have used some better deck RNG here because most of the damage came from a King Art earlier in the game that did, you know, half my health due to me not pulling blade counters and auras. Aside from that though, it was an uphill battle. As a death, you kind of have to pick what you lose to, as I was, you know, saying before, and as I said, you know, I decided to choose to lose the overtimes because there's only like a couple schools that really use all that, so there's not really much to be done there. Mostly because the counters don't work, but don't worry about it. I have had thoughts about Weaving Storm, because it really is, like, it really and truly is a matter of time before Death Wizards start whipping Turmoil on these like they did a year ago, and the Zilla Blades would honestly work quite nicely with Wraith, but then I'd just lose to anyone that shields, so not quite worth the trade-off. Maybe I'm gonna have to do what I do on my ice and triple school, which means that's a lot of stats I'm gonna lose, oh boy. Alright, well, that should be fun. Gotta create a set for that now, I guess. Game 21, another exercise, and deck RNG screwing me over. Initially, I thought this was going to be another Lith situation since I'd gone against her before on another character, and that's what she did. But after I countered her traps by pulling my one Sun Serpent, she pivoted to continuing the blade spam and instead going for a life hit. This, of course, could have gone over just like Game 17 if I'd been able to pull any Skeletal Dragons, but from the looks of things, this may have just been chalked from jump. I'm pretty sure I was seen in the arena after queuing, and knowing this guild and their history, I'm not ruling out the possibility that this was a Q snipe. I'm saying this because she used a Myth King art to clear my 6 infections that I was going to use for damage, and keeping her pips up to send another if I tried to gain leverage again, as well as numerous 70 sets for 2 matchups she should win safely, especially if this nonsense is all she's doing. Not to mention packing the new Life Myth Fusion that clears shields for cover blades. All of this together completely chalks my strat specifically because I can't go for shields without getting centaured, and I can't go for infections without getting arted. If I've got nothing to leverage, and I also just cannot pull my own leverage cards against her for the life of me, like, there was only one way this matchup was really gonna go. Game 22, this was really just a run-of-the-mill Death v Storm game. I hit a nasty mash for 6,800 damage, which is about 85% of his health, and then finished him off with a Banshee for the kill. Nothing too special here, but I wish I could have gotten some more matches like this, if I'm being honest. In Game 23, bro, went against a Fire, and this is just one of those games that make you wonder why you still play the game at all. If there's going to be this much deck failing with the devs' full support behind that being a thing in the game, with it getting worse and worse every update, why even bother playing? If y'all are in my Discord server, link in description, y'all will know that I am quitting PvP for good at some point after 2024. I just cannot do this anymore. Like, tell me why I can't pull a move to break her shield for 4 turns in a row, and that would set up a game-winning combo. Tell me why I can't pull Bubbles, the thing my school needs the most against hers, and when I do, she just has another one of her own at the ready. Tell me why I can't find any defensive moves to stop her from using a fundamentally busted spell. Tell me why I can't pull any useful cards that I need in order to set up combos and deal actual damage. Tell me why I'm getting 3 of my 4 Skeletal Dragons in hand when she's barely blading. Tell me why Dark Surge exists in this game. There's so many reasons to quit, and I think it's about time. I'm dedicated to y'all, but I can't keep doing this to myself. I gave it a shot and decided 2020 was far superior. Maybe on the slim chance if that actually comes back, I may upload PEV again, but who knows. My favorite side activity in this game has been massacred by Ratbeard, Artie, and Cam, and there really is no hope for it at the moment. Okay, game 24. Alright, I don't know who this guy is or what I did to offend him, because I truly do not think I've made any enemies on the Wizards card game. That seems a little stupid. It's a Wizards card game. Why are you, like, seriously beefing with people? With that in mind, remember how I was talking about people who just sit there and play counter, not letting you do anything? Well, that doesn't just apply to Jades. Like I said, I'm a more proactive player, which means I like to do things that progress the match. From the looks of things, this guy likes to do things that stall the match. Whenever I'd aura, he had a negative aura. Whenever I'd bubble, he had a dark wind. Whenever I'd threefold to set up a mash, he would bury, not caring that it barely healed him. He used 2 different kinds of Hecats, both of which put different negative auras on me, and just overall made sure I could not play the game. I'd go for a poison and he'd instantly Zilla, basically just the anti-fun super sweaty strat. And I guess as a Storm, that's what you gotta go for against the death, being, you know, Giga set and all that is probably the only way to win reliably, but I bet he loses most of his matches that aren't against Death Wizards, like, let's be real. And this guy was the most excited I've seen someone beating me in a very long time. Again, I have no idea who he is, but look, man, if you want to get an ego over sweating buckets in the Wizards card game in November 2024, then that's on you, I guess. Become ungovernable. Bathe in your own misery, but that's not going to affect me none. At least there's only one more game after this. The last game, game 25. I saw this guy with his Leaffoot pet and my Jadar started immediately pinging in the red zone. I knew that in order to beat a guy who wanted to sit under Brace and Sanctuary as well as using Sacred Charge for the Mendor that it gave, I was going to have to really blitz him down as quickly as possible. The match kinda meandered for a while, but it picked up steam when I got a triple buff based Doom Oni off, and that did 6500. Keeping 3 folds on him was imperative at this point in the game, and I was able to do that with relative ease, despite his running Stone Colossus, which honestly isn't even a bad idea if you're not a weirdo lifting for rank, so shout out this guy for that. A mash and a headless later, and I had him at about 2500 HP. That's in kill range. Had we seen much more overpowered flying rat spam, I probably wouldn't have been in the spot to be able to win, but I kept infections on him, and that really sealed it for me in the end. With a big boner in hand, and a 55 blade on me from an earlier ghoul, I was ready to send it and win. I clinched the W for the final game of this video, keeping up that trend of doing so for the last 4 videos now. Always love to see that, especially when I'm winning against the Life Wizard. Shows that matchup isn't totally chalked 100% of the time, so I'm also happy about that. This match let me end the video above 1600 rank, which was refreshing given all the random nonsense that happened throughout this video. Well, time for some closing thoughts. Death has definitely had its share of ups and downs throughout this year. It was up in the dorm and cosplay meta of January, then it was down a bit in the PvE and stacking meta in February and March. Then after Arc 2 Spell Elements kind of killed that for a while, as well as, the Hydra nerf that was long overdue, but it was up again from April through July with how cracked Wraith was, then it was, down again from August until about now, where it's honestly still kind of down, but at least it has a tool to deal with its main weakness being shields. I think Death has a lot of room to climb. It would definitely be nice if the 2 schools of counters were better matchups, considering how often they're queued, but what can you do? Death can pull off some crazy stuff right now in this meta, but more than ever, we exist in Matchup 101, as some put it, where most PvP matches are decided the moment both players load into the arena, not when someone makes a particularly good play. This was a big contributing factor to how I went 15 and 10 here. It's a lot less about skill these days and more about matchups, and the devs have been trying to steer the game towards that since 2021, when Rochambeau initially got added. That affects Death a lot right now. It's not favored in many matchups, and one of its main schools that it counters is doing the opposite of that. Death is versatile, and there's a number of things that you could do with it, and there's even a new gear setup that I've been meaning to try, but just haven't been able to due to, missing a piece, being the archival amulet. I do still need to go get that, but I'll try and lock in and go get it, but we'll really just have to see. If y'all made it to the end here, I want to say thank you very much for watching, as it means a lot to me when y'all watch these longer videos. I do these to test the waters and see how well a school is really performing, but y'all always seem to enjoy them, and I'm glad about that. So, thank y'all for watching. I've been Ice Gold. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave like 50 comments for the algorithm. My Discord is down in the description if you want to chat with me some more, and I will see y'all later.